If you started Jiu-Jitsu in your 40s as a white belt, let me ask you something. Isn't the scariest thing getting injured? This video started with a question someone left on a previous video. They asked about injuries after 40 and how to avoid them. So this time, I want to share a few thoughts on lowering that risk. An injury doesn't end with "it hurts." It's the explanation you give your family when you get home. The quiet worry about work the next day. At this age, it's not as simple as "I'll be fine in a few days." It can linger, and yet, even when people say, "Be careful," you are not always sure what that actually means. Once the sparring starts, are you rolling at full intensity without even realizing it? Hello, I'm Masa from the Rolling Dead. I started Jiu-Jitsu at 43 and earned my brown belt at 50. When I think back to my white belt days, I honestly had no idea what was actually dangerous. Looking back now, there are moments where I think I was lucky nothing serious happened. Jiu-Jitsu is a contact sport. Even without strikes, you can't eliminate the risk of injury. Injury don't come from just one thing. Broadly speaking, there are three main factors. The first is psychological, ego, urgency, the need to win. The second is technical, not understanding which directions are dangerous, how pressure travels through the joints, or when you should let go instead of forcing through. And the third is physical, mobility, fatigue, strength. Most white belts don't realize which one is driving them. Of course, the dynamic with the training partner plays a role too. But after 7 years on the mat, I started to notice something. White belts tend to get injured for similar reasons. Often, it comes down to misunderstanding of what sparring really is. If you understand that, you don't have to break yourself unnecessarily, especially as a white belt. The more time you spend on the mat, the faster you grow. Time off because of injury is time you can't get back. When I think back to my white belt days, I realize how little I actually understood. From both sides, whether you are the one tapping or the one applying the submission. You don't really know when something is truly locked in. You don't know how long you should hold on or how far you are allowed to push. You don't know the right amount of pressure or the right speed. For many people, sparring becomes something you think is about winning and losing. You want to win. You don't want to lose. But as a white belt, you don't actually know how to win yet. And you don't really know how to not lose either. So what happens? You go all in. You rush. You grab. You pull. You push. You squeeze. Everything at full power. It's like lowering the accelerator before you even understand the traffic rules. As a white belt, I used to believe the same thing. That sparring was about winning and losing. If I ended up stuck under a mount, I felt like I had failed. If someone was controlling me, I thought I was losing. When my guard pass wasn't working, I would get frustrated. I'd dive in harder, force my knee through, rush the movement, sometimes without even realizing how reckless I was being. But slowly, I began to see it differently. I'm not saying that focusing on winning is wrong. Some people go that way. But for me, it wasn't fully aligned with what actually makes you stronger. Over time, I realized something. It wasn't just ego. It was the way I understood sparring. Somewhere along the line, I had absorbed the idea that sparring was a scoreboard, that it existed to decide who was better. And if that's the purpose, of course you go all in. Of course you fight every position like it's the final seconds of a match. Then one day, a black belt told me, "White belts are free, your job is to fail." I didn't fully understand it at first, but the words stayed with me. White belts are free. Being pinned isn't failure, it isn't shame. In Jiu-Jitsu, every position is a classroom. Even getting smashed is part of the lesson. Mount, side control, even being completely stuck underneath someone. They are all places to learn. When that perspective shifted, getting smashed stopped feeling like defeat. It became feedback. It became part of my training. Sometimes, I even started to enjoy it. Maybe that sounds a little masochistic, The goal wasn't to win the round anymore. The goal was to understand something. When the purpose changed, my behavior changed. I used to force my way out, relying only on strength, rushing everything. Instead of fighting the position, I started studying it. I tried to understand where the pressure was, where the space was, and what was happening between us. That's when injuries quietly decrease, because you stop fighting blindly. Relax. That's the advice everyone gives. But honestly, telling a white belt to relax almost never works. Because to truly relax, you first have to know where to apply strength. You need to know which structure is safe, which directions are dangerous, and where your base actually is. Experienced grappler knows that. That's why they can soften. As a white belt, you don't fully understand that structure yet. So even if you try to relax, your body tightens anyway. But there is a more natural way to calm your movements. Start by really watching your partner. Notice their breathing when they adjust a grip, when their weight shifts. Shift your focus from fighting to observing. That alone changes your nervous system. The sudden explosions decrease, the panic reactions soften. Strangely enough, when you start watching your partner, you begin to see yourself more clearly too. That awareness protects you. If possible, try filming your sparring. I've noticed people who get injured often don't fully see how they are moving. In some gyms, filming during class isn't allowed, but maybe during an open mat it is. When you watch the footage, don't focus on who won. Instead, look at how you moved in response to your partner. Notice the rhythm. Were you matching their pace or rushing ahead of it? Were there moments when you suddenly sped up? Moments when you forced something that wasn't really there? Sometimes the problem isn't strength, it's a lack of awareness. And video is one of the fastest ways to build that awareness. Being afraid of injury is normal. In many ways, it's wise. But if that fear turns into avoidance, if you only drill or only flow roll just to save, your growth can quietly stall. When you review your sparring footage, you begin to understand your movement more clearly. You see your reactions, your pacing, your patterns. That kind of objectivity doesn't just reduce injuries, it accelerates improvement. You stay safer and you grow faster. If you are willing, I'd love to hear from you. When you got injured, where do you think it really came from? Was it your mindset, your technique, your physical condition? And now, what are you doing to reduce the risk? There isn't one right answer, but your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. Sometimes, a single comment can prevent someone from making the same mistake. This isn't a place to get strong alone. It's a place where we learn from each other. This is something I wish I understood earlier, and we'll keep exploring ideas like this. Thank you for watching. Host